morning. How are you? Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have a statement to announce today. I warmly welcome the statement today by His Excellency President Hamid Karzai concerning the presidential elections in Afghanistan. He has made it clear that the constitutional process must be respected. This process is about the future of Afghanistan and participation of Afghan people in their future. I commend President Karzai for the leadership he has displayed and for his commitment to ensuring a full respect for Afghanistan's constitution and its democratic process. I also commend Dr. Abdullah Abdullah for his dignified approach to the campaign as well as to the difficult post-election period. These elections were held under extremely difficult, even dangerous circumstances. The courage and patience demonstrated by the Afghan people and their leaders must be recognized and applauded. They have voted in the face of intimidation and insecurity. This is the first time that the Afghan institutions have conducted presidential election. These institutions, the Independent Election Commission and the Electoral Complaints Commission, have worked closely to ensure strict adherence to the constitutions and electoral law of Afghanistan. The United Nations has supported the work of these institutions in their efforts to ensure that all valid votes cast in the elections of August 20, 2009 were taken into account and the voice of the Afghan people was clearly heard. The United Nations will do its utmost for the conduct of the second round of vote election scheduled for November 7th this year in a free, fair, transparent, and secure environment. I wish finally to thank my special representative, Mr. Kai Eide, and the staff of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, for their tireless work in support of the legitimate Afghan institutions and in keeping the electoral process on track. Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary General, concerning this upcoming round on November 7th, will the UN's role be the same? Will you adjust it in any way, make it, give the UN a little bit of a different role, a different approach to this election to ensure that it might be less fraudulent than the first round? And what is your degree of confidence that there will be a difference this time, that this one will be more honest?
You can understand that there will be a huge challenge in conducting second elections on November 7th. We have only 18 days left before November 7th. United Nations will ensure to provide all necessary technical assistance as we have done for the first elections, including working very closely with the Electoral Complaints Commissions and Independent Election Commissions, and also in close coordination with international partners to make this election a most transparent and credible and secure manner. We will basically do a similar functions there, but having learned lessons from the first elections that there was a widespread fraud, irregularities and fraudulence, we will try our best in close coordination with Afghan leadership and Afghan institutions and other international major partners to make this election as fair and free of fraudulence.
Mr. Secretary General?
Sorry, it's my turn. So, Mr. Secretary General, do you think the international forces should deploy more troops in Afghanistan, and in which time frame?
This is what the countries who have been providing troops should decide. I understand that the United States government is seriously considering the augmentation of forces to Afghanistan, I would respect any decisions by the United States government. The military assistance will be one of the effective means and ways to assist and help Afghanistan people in their very difficult efforts to make their country, first of all, politically stabilized in their fighting against Taliban and against terrorism. That we should appreciate the noble sacrifices by many troop contributing countries, including United States. Now, as some American government officials have said that it would be very important for Afghanistan government to show that they are reliable, they are credible partner, and they should have their own stability and on a democratic process. After all, United Nations has been very closely working together with all ISAF troop contributing countries, as well as other development assistant countries. We will continue to do that.
Mr. Secretary General, yeah. Can you just tell me how you feel the UN has come out of this after the last 2 months? I mean, do you think that its credibility has been damaged, given that the man you dismissed turned out to be right about the extent of fraud?
United Nations, since the beginning of this first election and right after the election, have been taking a leadership role in close coordination with major international partners and together with the leadership of Afghanistan. Over the last few days, I have been actively discussing with international leaders as well as Afghanistan leadership, including President Karzai, that all the processes should be carried out according to Constitution of Afghanistan and in accordance with the electoral processes previously agreed upon among the parties concerned. This effort has been much appreciated by Afghanistan leadership and other international community. I'm very much pleased that the Afghan leadership, President Karzai, has agreed to respect the result of this independent election commission as well as electoral complaint commission, as has been agreed before, and in accordance with the constitutional process. United Nations will continue to play such a role. The credibility of the United Nations has been there, will continue to be there.
Thank you, Secretary General. To prevent fraud, what will the United Nations do practically? Could you give me more explanation of that?
First of all, there should be security ensured so that the voters will be able to express their will without any threat or difficulties. And there should be necessary logistical support provided by the United Nations and international major players. This is what we are going to do. We have learned the very valuable but painful lessons from the first election. First of all, we will advise the independent election commissions not to recruit those officials who might have been involved in this fraudulent electoral processes. And we will ensure to make all administrative and technical manners to ensure that this election will be carried out in a most fair and transparent manner. We must not repeat what they had done last time.
Yeah, to follow up on the BBC question, sir, would you have had an easier time organizing this had the entire UN made statements about the fraud when Galbraith did, since it was so obvious? And the runoff will probably be won by Karzai, and can you really make sure that the same fraudulent stuffing of the ballots are not going to be repeated?
The important thing is that even though, unfortunately, fraudulence, widespread fraud has taken place, the measures which we have put in place had worked. We detected the fraud and we reported this fraud to Security Council. Right after the election of the first election, in my latest report to Security Council, I reported to the members of Security Council that there was a fraud, and my special advisor, special representative, Mr. Karzai, also reported to the Security Council. Now, all these measures will be put in place again so that the mechanisms and measures will continue to work and function properly, so that we will prevent any further fraudulent practices and irregularities.
How much more effective, or how much of a difference do you think it would have made if the UN had been more effective at policing Afghanistan and itself for internal fraud and corruption in the years leading up to this?
After all, this is Afghan-led processes. United Nations and international members have provided technical and logistical support and also advised them to ensure that these two independent electoral commissions, one is Afghan-led and the other is United Nations-backed, they worked closely in harmony. That has been, I think, worked out. We will try our best, as I said, to make this election as much as credible and transparent. This is our commitment.
Phantom polling places. What Mr. Galbraith had called, he said that the polling stations in regions of the country controlled by the Taliban would be difficult to police them, shouldn't have been opened in the first round. Do you anticipate, does the UN support having these so-called phantom polling stations remain open in the second round?
The so-called phantom polling stations, I'd like to make it clear that the principles and the priorities of the United Nations in assisting these electoral processes last time was to provide and to ensure that all Afghanistan people would be able to express their will by casting their votes. The idea suggested by Mr. Peter Galbraith was to reduce the number of polling stations just to prevent the possible fraud. That was not acceptable. Just to deprive the right of Afghan people of their voting was not acceptable in terms of the core values of democracy. We wanted, our principle was that to open as many polling stations as possible so that as many people could participate in their vote. That was a main difference. It was not, the question didn't arise from whether there was fraud or not. We knew that there was a fraud. We reported that there was a fraud. Therefore, this time again, as much as security allows, as much as all logistical and situation on the ground allows, we will try to ensure that all the Afghan people should be able to express their own will freely, without any intimidation or threat. Thank you very much. Thank you.